Princess Zalara of the Ethari Dominion sat rigidly inside the diplomatic transport, her iridescent eyes fixed on the armored window as stars streaked past. She was royalty, heir to 1,000 systems, yet today she had been assigned a single escort, a human. Zalara clicked her tongue in annoyance. Humans were Deathworlders, yes, but individually unimpressive, soft-skinned, lacking claws, fangs, venom, or psionic gifts. The Dominion had only agreed to this escort as a political gesture toward the growing Terran Union. Across from her sat her escort, Commander Elias Ward, dressed in plain dark armor without ornament. His helmet rested on his knee, revealing a calm face marked by old scars. He had not spoken since boarding. "You are very quiet for someone entrusted with my life," Zalara said coolly. "I speak when needed, Your Highness," Elias replied evenly. That answer only deepened her irritation. She had expected bravado, fear, or obsequiousness, not this infuriating calm. The transport entered the shadow of the neutral moon Karos, where peace talks were to be held. Zalara finally relaxed slightly. Karos was heavily monitored. An attack here would be unthinkable. That was when every light in the cabin went dark. Alarms screamed as the ship lurched violently. Zalara gripped her seat, heart racing. Her attendants cried out in panic. "Assassins," Elias said calmly, standing, "stay behind me." Zalara scoffed, despite the fear clawing at her chest. "Against trained killers, you alone are useless, human." Elias did not reply, but his hand tightened around his helmet as the hull began to rupture. The side of the transport exploded inward, metal tearing like paper as vacuum alarms howled. 12 figures poured through the breach, armored in matte black exosuits, their weapons glowing with lethal charge. Zalara recognized the sigils instantly, the void knives, elite assassins feared across the spiral arm, each one capable of slaughtering platoons. Her blood ran cold. Elias moved. He slammed his helmet on and activated it in one smooth motion, Mag locking his boots to the deck as he stepped forward, placing himself between the princess and the attackers. The assassins opened fire, plasma bolts screaming through the cabin. Elias rolled, grabbed a fallen weapon mid-motion, and returned fire with terrifying precision. One assassin dropped instantly, head snapped back as the shot punched through his visor. Another lost an arm, screaming as he was flung into the hull. Zalara stared in disbelief. Humans were not supposed to move like that. An assassin leapt at Elias with twin energy blades. Elias met him head-on, blocking one strike with his forearm shield and driving a combat knife into the assassin's neck joint, twisting hard. The body collapsed at his feet. That was 3. The remaining assassins adjusted, spreading out, using coordinated flanking maneuvers, tactics perfected over centuries. Elias grinned inside his helmet. "So," he muttered, "you're professionals." The cabin became a war zone, smoke, sparks, shattered consoles. Zalara crouched behind a seat, watching in horrified fascination as Elias fought like a force of nature. He used the environment mercilessly, depressurizing sections to throw enemies off balance, smashing one assassin's head into a bulkhead hard enough to crack alloy. 2 attacked together. Elias let them think they had him cornered, then detonated a flash charge at his feet, blinding them. When their vision returned, both were already dead, throats crushed. Zalara realized something chilling. Elias was not fighting desperately. He was controlling the battle. Another assassin fired a grav net, pinning Elias momentarily. Zalara gasped, thinking it was over. Elias growled, muscles straining as he tore free, bones audibly cracking. He charged, tackled the assassin through the breach, and both vanished into space. Seconds later, Elias Mag locked himself back inside, dragging the limp body with him. That made 10. The last 2 assassins hesitated, fear finally visible in their posture. "You should have sent more," Elias said quietly. "They attacked anyway." "They died seconds later." Silence fell, broken only by alarms and Zalara's ragged breathing. Medical drones arrived minutes later, along with security forces. They stared at the carnage in stunned silence. 12 void knives, dead. Zalara stepped forward slowly, her gaze fixed on Elias, who was removing his helmet. Blood streaked across his face, not all of it his. "You were injured," she said softly. "Nothing serious," Elias replied, shrugging. Zalara lowered her head, a royal gesture of acknowledgement, unheard of toward a non-noble. "I misjudged you, Commander Ward," she said. "I believed you weak because you were human." Elias met her eyes, his expression unreadable. "Humans come from a world that tries to kill us every day," he said. "Predators, storms, disease, gravity. We survive by adapting, by enduring, by hitting back harder than whatever comes for us." Zalara felt something shift inside her, a realization both humbling and terrifying. "You were never useless," she said. "You were restrained." Elias smiled faintly. The story spread across the Dominion within days. The human escort who defeated 12 elite assassins alone. Political perceptions shifted overnight. Where humans had once been dismissed, they were now studied, respected, and quietly feared. As for Zalara, she requested Elias as her permanent guard, a decision that shocked her court. "You trust him that much?" her advisor asked. Zalara glanced at Elias, standing silently at the chamber door, watchful as ever. "I trust him with my life," she replied, "and with the future." Elias inclined his head slightly, ever the professional. The princess smiled to herself, knowing she would never again mistake quiet strength for weakness. Because sometimes, the most dangerous weapon in the galaxy was the one you underestimated. The council chamber of the Ithari Dominion had never been silent like this before. 1,000 delegates from 1,000 species sat frozen, their bioluminescent crests dimmed, their wings folded, their tendrils unmoving. At the center of the chamber floated a single holographic projection, 12 armored bodies laid out in stark detail, each one tagged, identified, confirmed, void knife assassins. The oldest race in the Dominion whispered prayers, the youngest stared in awe. Princess Zalara stood at the central dais, her posture straight, her voice steady, though her heart still remembered the sound of tearing metal and dying screams. "These assassins were neutralized by one individual," she said, "a human." A ripple of disbelief spread through the chamber. Some delegates laughed nervously, others hissed in protest. "This is impossible," croaked the Threxian Env, his armored plates clattering. "Void knives are bred for killing." Zalara lifted a hand, and the chamber quieted again. "The impossible," she said calmly, "is what happened when we underestimated him." Behind her, Commander Elias Ward stood at attention, wearing formal Terran black, his hands clasped behind his back, his expression unreadable. The projection shifted, now showing combat telemetry, slowed footage, enhanced angles, every kill, every movement, every calculated decision. Gasps echoed as the footage played. Delegates recoiled as Elias tore through the assassins with brutal efficiency. "This was not rage," Zalara continued. "This was discipline." The council watched as Elias deliberately chose positions, forced choke points, used decompression as a weapon, absorbed injuries that would have killed most species outright. A voice trembled from the upper tiers. Why did he not flee? Elias finally spoke, his voice carrying without effort. "Because I was assigned to protect her." That was all he said. Something fundamental shifted in the chamber. For centuries, the Dominion had measured strength by size, by natural weapons, by psychic output, by bio-engineered superiority. Humans had none of those advantages. And yet this one had stood alone against 12 perfected killers and prevailed. The council session ended in stunned silence, but the galaxy did not. The reaction was immediate and violent. Pirate clans erased human targets from their hunting lists overnight. Mercenary guilds doubled their prices when Terran forces were involved. criminal syndicates quietly burned intelligence caches containing human profiles. On the Outer Rim, a warlord cancelled an invasion after learning that Terran advisors were embedded with the defenders. A phrase began circulating through secure channels, whispered first, then spoken openly. Do not corner a human. On Terra itself, Elia's ward returned to a hero, welcome he neither wanted nor acknowledged. Crowds gathered, banners waved, media drones swarmed, but Elias walked through it all with the same calm he had worn in the burning wreck of the transport. He declined interviews, refused medals beyond protocol, and requested reassignment. When asked why, he gave a single answer. My job is not finished. That job brought him back to Zalara. The princess now traveled with heavier security than ever before, but it was Elias she trusted, not the fleets, not the shields, not the treaties. She had seen what happened when everything failed except him. During one quiet transit between systems, Zalara finally broke the silence that often surrounded them. Commander, she said, were you afraid? Elias considered the question, stars reflecting in his visor. Yes, he said honestly. Zalara blinked, surprised. Then why did you fight as you did? She asked. Elias turned slightly, his voice low. Fear is not a stop signal on my world, he said. It is an instruction. Zalara felt a chill ripple through her scales. The next attempt came months later. Not assassins this time, but something worse. A false peace summit, a forged Dominion clearance, a hidden fleet waiting in dead space. Zalara sensed the trap too late, the stars ahead distorted, gravity wells snapping into place. Ambush. Dozens of warships decloaked, weapons charging, their hulls marked with the sigil of the Severance Pact, a faction that believed the Dominion weak for negotiating with humans. This time, their leader broadcast, there will be no single escort miracle. Elias watched the tactical display without blinking. How many? He asked. Overwhelming, the captain replied grimly. Elias nodded once, then opened a secure channel to Terra. Protocol Black, he said. There was a pause, then a single reply, calm and absolute. Confirmed. Zalara watched in confusion as Elias removed his helmet, rolling his shoulders as if preparing for battle. What are you doing? She demanded. Making sure they never try this again, Elias said. Space tore open. Human ships did not arrive with elegance or ceremony. They arrived like weapons themselves, brutal angular hulls tearing through jump space, engines screaming, cannons already firing. Terran fleets poured in by the hundreds, then the thousands, overwhelming the ambush in moments. The Severance Pact had expected negotiation, fear, retreat. They had not expected humanity. The battle was short and catastrophic. When it ended, wreckage drifted in silence, and the surviving enemy ships fled in blind panic. Zalara stared at the display, her voice barely a whisper. All this, she said, for me. Elias replaced his helmet, turning back toward her. No, he said, for the message. That message echoed across the galaxy. Humans did not posture, they did not threaten, they responded decisively, disproportionately, and without hesitation. Species that once dismissed them now sought alliances, training exchanges, cultural understanding. Some out of respect, others out of fear. Zalara found herself at the center of a new era, one where Terran influence reshaped diplomacy itself. And always at her side stood Elias Ward, silent, watchful, immovable. One night, as they looked out over the glowing curve of a living world below, Zalara spoke softly. On my world, she said, we teach our children that power is inherited. Elias said nothing. But now, she continued, I believe power is chosen. Elias finally looked at her. It is, he agreed, and so is restraint. Zalara smiled, a rare genuine expression. Then the galaxy is fortunate, she said, that humanity chose restraint first. Elia's expression hardened just slightly. For now, he said. Far across the stars, civilizations listened, watched, and recalculated. Because the age of underestimating humans had ended. And the age of quiet fear had just begun. History rarely announces the moment it changes, but the galaxy felt it when humanity stopped being quiet. In the months following the failed ambush, borders shifted without fleets moving, treaties were rewritten without battles fought, and ancient powers began speaking carefully whenever Terran representatives entered the room. Princess Zalara noticed it everywhere, in the way governors bowed deeper, in the hesitation before threats were made, in the subtle fear behind smiles meant for diplomats. But fear, she learned, was never free. The Dominion fractured in small ways at first, trade delays, sudden audits, forgotten obligations, all justified with polite excuses. Then came the accusations. The princess has compromised our neutrality, declared the Court Assembly. By standing beside humanity, she has invited their wars into our space. Zalara listened without flinching, Elias standing behind her as always, silent and still. What you call their wars, she replied calmly, I call their response to betrayal. That answer spread faster than any fleet. Not all reactions were diplomatic. On the border world of Selvar Prime, riots erupted when rumors spread that human advisors would be stationed there. Crowds burned Terran symbols and shouted warnings of extinction. Zalara insisted on going personally, despite every warning. If fear is growing, she said, then I will face it. The shuttle descended into a city trembling on the edge of collapse, smoke rising from shattered plazas, sirens wailing. Elias scanned constantly, threat markers lighting his visor. They are not void knives, he said quietly, but desperation kills just as easily. The meeting hall was surrounded by protesters, their chants vibrating through the structure, some calling for Zalara's resignation, others calling for blood. Inside, the Planetary Council sat pale and rigid. You cannot protect us forever, one councillor said bitterly. One human does not change the galaxy. Elias stepped forward for the first time, his voice calm but carrying. No, he said, but 12 dead assassins did. Silence fell like a blade. Before anyone could respond, explosions rocked the outer district, screams echoed through the hall, and emergency lights flared. Elias was already moving, pushing Zalara behind reinforced cover. Internal attack, he said, they planned this. Armed militants burst through the doors, not professionals, not elites, just frightened citizens with stolen weapons and radical beliefs. Zalara saw it then, the truth she had not wanted to admit. This was the cost. Not everyone feared humans enough to stand down, some feared them enough to strike first. Elias did not kill unless he had to, disarming attackers with brutal efficiency, breaking limbs, shattering morale, positioning himself as a wall between chaos and the princess. But one militant slipped through, a young alien barely out of adolescence, eyes wide with terror and fury, weapon shaking as it charged. Elias moved too late. Zalara acted instead. She stepped forward, placing herself between them, her voice sharp and commanding. Enough, she cried. The militant froze, confused, trembling. This is what fear has made of you, Zalara continued, and this is what it will cost you. Security forces arrived moments later, ending the standoff, the militants subdued, the hall left scarred and silent. Afterward, in the quiet of the shuttle, Zalara's hands trembled. You could have been killed, Elias said quietly. So could you, she replied, meeting his gaze. That is the difference, Elias said. I accepted that long ago. Zalara looked away, stars drifting past the viewport. I used to believe power meant safety, she said. Now I see it only means responsibility. Elias nodded once. "Welcome to the club," he said. The incident became a turning point, not because of violence, but because of restraint. Footage of Zalara standing unarmed before an attacker spread across the networks, followed by analysis of Elia's choosing not to slaughter civilians despite provocation. The narrative shifted. Humans were no longer painted solely as monsters waiting to be unleashed, but as weapons capable of choosing not to fire. That scared some even more. In private chambers, far from cameras and councils, Zalara finally asked the question that had haunted her since the transport attack. "What happens," she asked softly, "if one day humanity decides restraint is no longer worth the cost?" Elias was quiet for a long time. "Then," he said carefully, "the galaxy will learn the difference between mercy and weakness." Zalara closed her eyes, understanding fully now. Standing beside a human was not protection. It was a statement, a promise to enemies, and a warning to friends that the future would not belong to the loudest, the largest, or the cruelest, but to those willing to endure fear, bear responsibility, and choose restraint until restraint was no longer an option. And somewhere deep in the void, those who watched and plotted felt something unfamiliar tighten around them. Not hatred, not defiance, but dread, because the human was still standing quietly beside the princess. And the galaxy had not yet seen what happened when he stepped forward again.